morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Nollywood Studies Center's Filmmakers Forum. Let me give a special welcome to our guest, Ms Anyiam-Osigwe. Thank you very much for agreeing to joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you. Good morning. Well, welcome to everyone. For those who are joining us for the first time, this activity is organized by the Nollywood Studies Center. The Nollywood Studies Center is a unit of the School of Media and Communication of the Pan-Atlantic University. And this is a forum that we organize to facilitate interaction between the members of the film industry and also the audience. Okay, so there's a platform to share ideas and so on. So welcome all of you. And once again, I welcome Ms Anyiam-Osigwe. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you with us. Now, as we go along, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll take them as we continue. Now, I know that we're going to have more people joining us as we go along, so this scanty audience right now, but more people will come. Well, Ms Peace Anyiam-Osigwe is often described as an entertainment executive. She's well recognized for her role in spearheading the development of the culture of awards in the Nigerian film industry. She's a founder of the Africa Film Academy, a body that governs the Africa Movie Academy Awards, AMAA. AMAA is aimed at honoring, promoting, and rewarding excellent narration in African films, as well as establishing unity in the African continent through arts and culture. It is acclaimed as the most prestigious film event and awards in Africa. Ms. Peace Anyiam-Osigwe, who is also a filmmaker and entertainment executive, is currently the president of the Association of Movie Producers, AMP. She has a degree in law and political science from Oxford Brookes University in the UK. As a social entrepreneur, she has been involved in various social projects. In 2012, she was bestowed with the honor of MFR by the Nigerian government for her contribution to the entertainment industry. She's a poet and has published 3 books of her poems. So once again, it's a delight to have you with us. Thank you so much. And I thank you particularly for being so punctual, for being even here before I got here myself. Well, let's get the ball rolling. If I may throw the first question. You founded the Africa Movie Academy Awards in 2005. AMAA has grown to be one of the most important and prestigious film events in Africa. So if I may ask, what motivated you and how did you go about establishing this Film Awards event?
Well, thanks for having me. The first thing I would say is that having grown up with in like a creative environment in the UK, it was very obvious that, Black filmmakers didn't have anywhere to really express themselves. So you found that we always kind of congregated together. Even when they were giving out grants in the UK, the Black filmmakers were struggling to get anything. There was just no recognition, and it was a struggle. It still is in a lot of ways in the UK. So when I came back to Nigeria, I got involved with Nollywood, and it was just exciting to be able to see how much films we were always making. But again, there was just something missing. Once there was none of the festival circuit where people could network, and then we were kind of isolated. We were always doing things in our own little world. And I just felt like, look, it would be nice to bring all the African filmmakers together from all over and just celebrate ourselves and put a little bit of glamour. And again, Nollywood had created these stars and nobody was really seeing them. And in 2004, I was able to help facilitate a trip to the US with Filmmakers Association of Nollywood in America. And using the foundation, the Anyiam-Osigwe Foundation, we're able to secure visas for almost all the filmmakers to go to America for this tour. And so that was a big expose. And it was so weird because we could sell out the Marriott in Brooklyn. We could sell out a place in Maryland for them to just see Aki and Popo, Genevieve, Richard Moffett, Dammy Joe. And it was interesting because being able to use the foundation to get all these visas, there was almost 100 of us that traveled to the US that year. And everywhere the crowds were out. Every African you could think of came out. Even at the Brooklyn, they had to call in the police. And it was just exciting to see people dress up to come out and see everything. And so working on the AMAs was just like, that was an aha moment for me in America to see that, look, people did want to see our people, and it would be nice for us to all come together. And so I started trying. I first wanted to do the Nigerian Academy Awards, but then I just realized that it will also isolate us again. And having grown up in the UK from primary school, secondary school, I knew that my whole kind of friends were all over Africa and all over the world. So I just thought, no, this has to be Pan-African so that we could all congregate and come together. And something I always tell people, I just think that Africans need to work more together. So this was just that point for me. And that's how it started. And everywhere we went to, we were just trying to find sponsorship. And then just by chance, I actually went with my brothers for a meeting, and they were having a meeting with the late DSP Alamesia, and they said, oh, our sister is trying to do her film thing. You know how Nigerian families are kind of dismissive of the creative industry? Well, that's, my father encouraged me a lot, but mom always apologizes in a way. She says, oh, my daughter's a lawyer, but she's a filmmaker. Like an expression. My brother said to him, oh, our sister is trying to do one film thing. And he just said, what is it exactly? I'll never forget. I said, well, this is this. I just had like 5 minutes to sell myself. And he said, okay, so will that mean that people come to this Bielsa and see that we are not on the national grid? I was wondering what was the national grid. He says, now we're not on the lights, NEPA lights. We use turbines. So I want people to come and see where the oil stayed. And I was like, okay, if this is a sell. And he now said, go and talk to Oronto Douglas, because he was the commissioner then of information. And I and Oronto sat down and we started looking at how to bring AMAA alive. And it was really an interesting time because we had to go through the process of how do you do this in a state that didn't have enough hotel rooms, didn't have an airport, and you were going to bring the world there. And I was like, okay. And the first year was amazing. I'll tell you the truth, because Danny Glover came and he arrived that day, and we had to drive from Port Harcourt Airport in the night to Bielsa. And guess what? He left that night as well after the show because he was filming in Namibia, and we had to bring him in on a private jet. And it was just an amazing experience. And yeah, that's how AMAA started. So that first AMAA was very interesting. We didn't have enough hotel rooms. We slept in rooms. People came from all over Africa and all over, and there was just not enough rooms. We just shared rooms. Some rooms had no fans, some had no air conditioners, but we survived the first few years.
Now that is really striking. I must say, starting so big, because that really is big. Because I know that many times there's a suspicion that, well, those outside Nigeria have of these Nigerian efforts. So did you have to deal with that? There's always a bit of suspicion. Okay, this first one, let's wait and see before we get committed. Did you face that challenge?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of issues with the first one because luckily, I would say luckily, I had already been within the film industry, film circuit abroad. So I kind of had a lot of friends that were in the festival circuit. So I had like Kit Shiri, who was based in the UK who had met many years ago, Dorothy Werner, who had also met, and we just got talking. And that's actually how Danny came about as well, because we just had to call on favors. And there's a lot of suspicion, and even till today, there is a lot of suspicion about Nigeria, even within the continent. There's a lot of lack of trust within the African continent about Nigerians and Nigeria. So let me give you an example. First of all, when we wanted to start, they thought it was all just going to be a Nigerian reward system and that Africans will never win. So when they saw that it wasn't really about celebrating just Nigerians, we got more interest from different countries. There was speculation first from the South Africans who were like, well, should we, shouldn't we? So we made a huge effort of going to their own events, Sitengi at that time, and always trying to sell the AMAA. So what you found is that to get the credibility, you actually had to be on the road to almost all the festivals, selling what you do, why AMAA was important to us as Africans. And then once we could get the bigger filmmakers involved, and they realized that the people who were the jury, I'll always say that my jury, the jury of the Africa Film Academy, I think are the strongest selling points of the AMAAs, because they are people that they have to send their films to for all the major festivals in the world. So you have a representative from the Berlinale, from Venice, from the British Film Festival, from Toronto, from Cannes, all the people that curate African cinema across the world are involved in the AMAA jury. So that gives us authenticity and gives us the transparency that they want to see. So that brought value to AMAA. And then because they realized that I cannot interfere, Professor Kwazi, who is with you people also, is a member of the AMAA Academy of Jurors. So you can imagine those kind of people who you're not going to be able to tell them what to judge. So yeah, I think that was the first thing that made other African countries and other African filmmakers begin to see the value in AMAA. And I think 2021 for us has been interesting because I would say Arab Africa came rushing into AMAA this year, you know, so normally they're the ones that we haven't really penetrated, but this year we had quite a few entries from Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt. So, you know, I'm glad to see that we're breaking in through there right now.
Well, that's, I must say that's impressive, because usually there tends to be this barrier between that part of Africa and the rest. Has anything changed to facilitate that? Or is it just that now they see it as AMAA has run for so long and they see it now as being better established for them to now participate?
I think I think it's the length of time and the fact that we've never really, we've been consistent in our 17 years. We've not had any breaks. And they've seen that. And we've also done a lot of reaching out, you know, explaining what AMAA is and why it is important. And I think COVID as well has made us all realize the necessity to converge and to grow the culture of networking amongst ourselves as well. And you would also find that, because AMAA also accepts films from Africans in the diaspora. So we found a lot of entries also coming in from our brothers in the United States, in the UK. And so, yeah, it is about credibility. It's also about sustainability and transparency. That's what I think.
I guess one could also bring in here, because looking at the Oscars, for instance, and all the recent discussions about the lack of representation across the board, I guess this also plays very much to that, one could say. Now, you mentioned something here. I must say, really, just to say congratulations, because sustaining something over 17 years is not easy at all. And the aspect of funding, because funding is always a major challenge, especially when it comes to this sector. How have you managed that?
Okay, I'll tell you that the sector is so undervalued, okay, by people, that it saddens those of us that have made this our career paths, okay, that people who should see the potential are not seeing it. So when you go for sponsorship, it's always like it's secondary to them. They don't see how it is, and that this has a lot of potential because it's something that Africa has a youthful population. So, and a lot of them are gravitated towards the creative industries. So when you go, you have to keep explaining, and sometimes they think they're doing you favors. Now, I was lucky in the beginning. I had the state government of Bielsa who came in not as exciting as a lot of people think that it was in the beginning, but they gave us the start. And when I say to people that the first AMAA, we got less than 20 million naira at that time, and at the later Makaiwe was doing Bob TV then, and so we kind of partnered with her because we needed to launch the AMAA, and we flew in almost everybody. Now, we were lucky. There was Arik then, there was Aero, and because it was in the Niger Delta, the later Ronta Douglas and I sat down and we said, look, let's go to the oil companies and see if they will pay for things. So we said, okay, we need this amount of rooms. Would you do that? We weren't asking for cash a lot of the time. We just wanted them to take responsibility for things. And that way it was easier to start out, because sometimes with some of the big majors, they don't want to give cash. They want to give in-kind sponsorship, and that's fine. As far as we were able to do the AMAA, that's all we cared about. And then a few years after we started, we got lucky with UBA. Tony Alumalu probably didn't know what he did for us then, but he gave us one of the most stable sponsorships for the AMAAs. We did he came in first on a small deal, I think in 2007, and then it grew. And so he now signed, UBA now signed a 3-year deal with us. And that was the major launch for AMAA, because it was quite a big deal for us at that time. And I think it goes down to be one of the biggest sponsorship deals in Nollywood with Celine Loader and everything. And they impacted on the value of AMAA, because we were now like going to festivals with them. We were processing things. We were training people along as well with them. And so, yes, it was a big deal for us. From then on, it's been a struggle. And in the last few years, it's probably been more of a struggle, because people come in, people go out of sponsorship. Banks are not doing as much as they used to do, but we keep looking for different ways around it. The most important thing is to sustain the award system. So once we're able to do that, and then we had to change some of the things we do. At one point we were bringing every nominee to AMAA and flying them in, doing their visas. And it was crazy. The cost was crazy, because sometimes we were paying as much as $200 for a visa from some of our embassies. And that was crazy. So what we just needed to do was find different ways of doing it. So we had to get involved with different organizations to bring the cost of bringing in people down, partner with some of the other film commissions across Africa. So if a film gets nominated, they might be able to bring in some of the nominees for us. And unfortunately, Arik went down, because they were one of the most fantastic, sponsors for AMAA. We had a long partnership with them on ticket pricing, but since they had the problems with AMCON, we haven't been that lucky. But they understood Nollywood. And so they partnered with most events that the creative industry did. And so that was a big help for us. And they were flying to all the major places. So you could connect from England or connect from the US to where you were going. And then, like I tell people, you have to keep writing those letters. You never know who you're going to hit, and never give up, because it's easy to say, oh, I've done like 30 proposals and nobody has taken the bite, but you just have to keep going. You can't give up. I think that's my bad nature. I'll keep coming back to you and saying, are you sure you really don't want to do AMA this year? Are you really, really sure? I try not to give up. I always try to keep going.
Well, I think the results show that, really. But let me take you back to something you said. Part of the challenges, you said people don't appreciate really the whole thing of the film industry, which is, I think, one of the things that AMA has helped very much to do, this aspect of the visibility. Many times that people are attracted now to the industry, they see this, you could say, prominence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they see that it's not, well, as we have been said in the past, that it's a field for dropouts and layabouts, which is really the negative perception that has always followed the creative space. But now, from your perspective, with your experience and all that you've experienced and people you've met and so on, do you really have any suggestion? How can we deal with this problem of people not appreciating? Because one would have thought that with all that the Nigerian film industry has done to change the global view, you could say, of Nigeria, because I think that's been a tremendous role to change things. And with the great impact that one sees that the industry is doing in terms of providing jobs and so on, and yet people do not get it. How do you think we can go about dealing with this?
Until people start to realize that the creative industry in general is the essence of life, and that they should deal with it in that way and understand that it provides all the core elements of work. So when you look at a film, the film process, you realize that almost everything that you do in life is part of it, isn't it? So you wear clothes, you get up in the morning, you get dressed, right? So we costume, we eat food, so you have caterers, you write, so you have the script writers. It's all the foundations that go through it. Now, I always say to bankers when they say, oh, we don't understand the ecosystem, how it works. I said, the same way you go and learn how to be a banker and how you lend money to agriculture, you lend money to this, is the same way you have to learn to lend money to this industry. Do not do it that you're doing us a favor, because the government keeps coming up with all these, I don't know if I'll call it handouts. The CBN comes up with this creative industry loan that they don't really understand how to facilitate it to the real filmmakers. Okay. When I say the real filmmakers, 90% of who they want to help have not been able to be helped because they can't go through the process of getting all those paperworks together. And until we admit that 90% of the people that work in the Nigerian film industry, a lot of them just came into it because of the passion they have. They don't have an understanding of how to write a budget. So that is one of the things that, coming in as the president of the Producers Association of Nigeria, we've had to do. We've had to train people on what it takes to do a proper film pitch so that you can access grants and funding. It's for them to realize that, oh, go and do your proposal and show us how you're going to make the money. It sounds so easy to a banker, right? And what the person is trying to explain is, it depends on my ROI, it depends on my intellectual property. This is what I have. And how do you communicate that to the bankers? How do you communicate that also to people who are saying that they're doing grants? So let's look at what we tried to do with Project Act, but when we wrote the Project Act document, because I was very involved with writing the Project Act document and getting then President Jonathan to approve it with the later Rotor Douglas, the whole idea was actually fundamentally to grow distribution in Nigeria. However, they turned it around and started doing other things along the way. The whole idea then was to improve distribution by having community cinemas in about 343 places across the country. So like we have 774 local governments. And then we realized that not all the local governments needed a community cinema. Some of them could be merged. Now, if you had a community cinema then, we were basing it on the fact that those community cinemas would be affordable community cinemas, like something that people in the local government areas could go to and watch a film for as little as 200 naira, and the setup costs for them was actually quite low at that time. I wouldn't know what it would be now. And the whole idea was to take part of that money, set up community cinemas, look at also platforms, distribution platforms like streaming platforms, and then also at television, which is actually one of the biggest spaces, normal television, which is one of the biggest spaces that Nigerian filmmakers and producers can make money from. It was supposed to be a process. So just to put it this way, government has to realize that the film industry is a professional workspace. Don't give us regulatory leaders that don't understand what we're doing. Like our NFC, for me, has a lot of issues. And I think that there's been a lot of dumping of people there for us rather than people who actually understand what the Film Commission or Film Corporation should do. That's one of the places that should help government liaise with the banking sector. So like in South Africa with the NFVF, and then you have the trade and industry in South Africa, they work very closely together. In Nigeria, we don't have a relationship with our trade and industry ministry. We just have our relationship only with Ministry of Culture and Tourism. And that's not only where we fall, because we trade in content. Nigeria is one of the biggest trade of content across the world. We make a lot of content and the world is buying it, not just in Africa, but also in the Caribbean and also in the diaspora. And in that, people have to understand is a business, it's a trade. That is one thing bankers have to look at. What is the process? So yes, we make films, but we're also selling these films. So how do you make it easier for us to sell these films? How do you set up an ecosystem whereby we can borrow based on our assumptions? So what we're trying to do right now in Association of Movie Producers is have like what we call an agreement with all the guilds and other associations of what we call a minimum wage agreement. So the producers know that there is going to be a minimum wage. We want to start putting a structure within the industry. So once there's a minimum wage agreement, there also begins to be like a minimum level that films can be bought for. Not that we're going to tell anybody that you can't sell your film for lower, but it means that whenever anybody is trying to enter the country to buy content, they'll already see that there is a minimum wage agreement. So you're not just going to come in and say, oh, I'm paying just, let's just say $1,000 for your film. No, because you know that for me to make a film, I am paying a minimum wage to the writer. I'm paying a minimum wage even to the Waka Pass actor. And so that doesn't cover my costs. Do you understand? Because there's also this myth that has gone around the world that, oh, we do films for less than $10,000. So everybody comes in here trying to price Nigerian content very low. And I always say that Nigeria has the highest number of producers, but the poorest number of producers in the continent as well. So we're feeling that once we start to put the structures in place and have within the guild system, the minimum wage agreements or understanding of a minimum wage agreement, you can't force anybody to adapt it, but you can implore them to do so that it will make the industry grow, if you understand what I mean. And then that would help government to begin to understand that there is some form of structure. It will also, we are engaging with Ministry of Trade and Industry. We're engaging with our minister who, should understand that the NFC needs to be more attentive in coming up with a robust relationship with the banks. So there must be a way for banks to understand that the IP is worth something. That is the key thing. So one of the things is that also trying to find insurers that would look at the value of people's old IPs. There's a lot of people who've made a lot of films over the years and don't have any value to it. So they suddenly think that, because they've shown it doesn't have a value anymore. So we're trying to bring all that back and put some kind of structure in place so that if you make 200 films, what is the value of those 200 films at the worst case scenario of digitalizing it, so that you have a portfolio value, so that when the bank is looking at you, they can say, well, XYZ, you have XYZ number of films. Even if we have to sell this content to the lowest bidder at $100 each, that means that we have this value for you. And that's what we're trying to do at the moment. So you can see that there's still a lot of work to get to where everything needs to be, and everybody needs to come into it. It's a long road to freedom.
You have said a lot. It certainly is a long road. You said so much that's packed there. There are quite a few things that I would like us to develop a little further. The first one, really, is this one of bringing everybody on board. I like very much the point you made about getting people to agree to a minimum wage, because I carried out a survey some years back, and part of the problem that many of the people I spoke to indicated, well, you could say it stems very much from perhaps the lack of means. That if an individual says to a producer or a director, what you're offering me is too small, I can't take it, that the challenge usually is that there's somebody else who will take it. There's always somebody else who, yes, will accept to go as low as possible, because for him it's an opportunity. Now, if everybody agrees to a minimum wage, then it means that there will be nobody willing to take anything lower than that. But now the problem is getting everybody to buy into that. And this is added to the fact that I think it's fair to say that most of those who are involved in this industry do not belong to the guild. That's the impression one gets, because there are people who are rather distrustful about the guilds, and they say, well, so I don't know, how do we then get people to that level of engagement if they don't want to really be
well, the good thing is that's a lot of that is changing. This year the census board came up with a rule that it's in there. It's something that people have disputed, but it said that you must belong to a professional guild to have your film censored. So that was one thing that led a lot of people to start wanting to join the guilds. But before that, once I came in to the Association of Movie Producers, our team is actually made up of what we call the older people and newer people in the industry. So it's been a lot easier. I can tell you that most of the key professionals in Nollywood today that are producing films as of right now commercially belong to the Association of Movie Producers. That was one of the things that we set out to do as a team, is to bring them on board, because we try to make them realize that without being a member of the association, there's no way to protect you in the long run. I don't want to go talking and fighting and saying things when I don't have most of the key producers there. So we do. Right now, the Association of Movie Producers has most of the key producers in Nollywood as part of what we have. However, we also have heads of guilds that are working together now, okay? And what we're trying to do is all of us come together and join together. So you have Victor Kai in DGN, you have Emeka Rollers in the Actors Guild, and we are actually working together to say to ourselves, this is important to all of us, that we should have a minimum wage so that we protect ourselves as well. It's the same thing with insurance, because a lot of times everybody accuses Nollywood of being beggarly. So we're trying to avoid that by putting structures in place that doesn't allow people to have that perception of us. So yes, people will say, oh, but even the minimum wage does not work generally in Nigeria. Well, it's not that it's going to be fixed, but at least let it be on paper. We're also insisting that all productions should have contracts so that the Waka Pass actor has a minimum wage that he will have. You can't just say, oh, come to my set and you give the person 500 naira, or you don't even give them money at all. Like the Actors Guild has made it a requirement now that you must feed people 3 times a day on your set. And so we as producers have said to ourselves, you must try to do that. Otherwise, cut your coat according to your size. Don't go making only food for actors and then you don't feed your crew, because that was happening as well. So there is a lot of work going on within the guild system, and a lot of people are joining because things are changing. Like I say, I will keep saying, if we're not all involved, then we can't change. And that was one of the reasons I even decided to come out from my little corner and run for the presidency of the Association of Movie Producers, because we've tried to do changes from the outside. It didn't work. So you find that you have to get in there and really understand what is the problem. Then you can get down and start to deal with it. So yes, now I've gotten into I was vice president at one time, but now as the president, it's been easier to try and change things a little bit. So the last 1 year has seen me going around the country, actually myself training people about what it is to be a producer. So we've done Akwa Ibom, we've done Enugu, we've done Rivers, and now we're going to be doing the northern states as well. So yes, and we did Delta State, which has an enormous amount of productions going on every month. It's crazy what's going on in Asaba and just Delta State in general. It's a humongous amount of films. In that month of May, we got about 400 films being produced there monthly.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, the training was for a week. And we'll be back next year there as well, because it's one of our big state chapters.
Figures like this are truly, impressive. And one would think that these figures would be sufficient to, you could say, persuade perhaps the financial institutions to try to get a little bit more involved, more willing to. So as part of these structures, will there be also a way? Because, for instance, I know what many of these institutions complain about is the lack of data. So they don't have they want to make their judgments, whether to give loans or whether to be involved on data. And they say many times there's no data. So all of these structures in place, is there also a structure to facilitate the collection of such data?
Well, that has already started with the cinemas and ComScore. So at least there is a transparency on cinema figures right now. Okay. So basically you can say these films that went to cinema made XYZ. However, yes, there is a lot of issues with data, but when we're doing the tracking from the Producers Association, so for the first time, we actually have a database in the Association of Movie Producers of our filmmakers that are registered producers across Nigeria. So if you come to our office and you say you want to know if this person is a registered producer, we will be able to check on our database and say, yes, he is, or no, he's not. And this is his address. And we can verify there's a membership number. All that is done. And everybody that's a member has a membership card. So It's not like before where anybody can just get up and say, oh, we're a producer. If you're a real professional and you belong to the Producers Guild, then you have a database. We have everything about you. We have your picture, we have everything. And then we're also tracking the films you're doing. So we kind of are beginning to say, okay, this producer has made XY number of films, and we want to know, we're trying to say, okay, how successful were the films? Some of our producers mainly produce for TV at the moment. So you have a lot of producers who do for Rock or for Africa Magic. A lot of the producers in Asaba are actually producing a lot of content for YouTube. And so we're beginning to just track what are they making on their YouTube channels, how much are they actually making, are they really making money? And yeah, it's quite interesting to just follow that tracking. And we're hoping that by end of next year, we will be able to say, this is what the value of what our producers have done in the last 1 year, if you understand what I mean. So we would just be able to say, oh, the Nigerian producers, XYZ, Asaba produced this number of films, expected revenue was this, and then see. But that's the only way we can start that, by tracking now. But why I also say banks are not doing their own thing is because a lot of us bank with these banks, so they see the turnover. You know, I'm talking about for producers. I am not talking about the actors, because we're also working about making banks understand that they're not tapping into the unbanked. But thank God for the digital platforms that are coming up now, like Kuda and all that. It's making it easier for us as producers to make sure that most people we work with have a bank account, because you don't have to leave your house or even the set to go and open an account. Whilst you're there on set, we can make you open an account and transfer your funds to you, so that we can actually track how much each film is being made for, because we want to make sure that all that is actually done on paperwork, you know, so that the tracking and the figures and the data, which everybody keeps on talking about, will be happening, because we can actually print out our bank statements and show you that we made this transfers, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, paperwork comes with people learning the value of it and understanding that it pays to go through the banking system, so that you can also track. It pays to have contracts, so that when people don't do the right thing, you have something to fall back on. Yeah. So all that is what we're working on. A lot of people have no contracts, and it's weird that people are parting with, you know, huge sums of money on productions, and there's no paperwork, as in contracts are not signed. So an actor may decide not to show up for 3 days, but you don't have anything to fall back on. And then I'll get a call at 11 o'clock at night. Madam President, they don't want to come on set. And I said, send me your contract. Oh, but I didn't have a contract. Or I paid him. I said, really? Sorry, I can't help. So my members have realized now that you must have contracts. Otherwise, I'm not going to face it. And they've seen that where I have had contracts, I've actually gone after those people and made sure they did what they were supposed to do for the producers. Because I tell people that without paperwork, we won't have the data. And that's it. So don't tell me you paid somebody cash. Even that Waka Pass actor that you're giving 5,000 or 2,000, please make it a transfer, so that I can track what you're doing. And that's our policy. That's what we're trying to push. It's not easy, because you're dealing with people who are not used to doing paperwork, and they find it tiring. Do you understand? And I'll give you an example. Netflix did the hardship fund thing, and they gave out to some producers and some directors. And I'll give you the example. Some of the documents, which to me as Peace are basic documents you should have for productions, they didn't have. And so some of them could not even access the hardship fund, because they did not have the paperwork to track their people. And in some cases, I have to actually send people to go and help to make sure that they had these funds. You know what I mean? Because they would have lost out on the hardship fund because of lack of paperwork. So now they're beginning to realize the process of why they need to have contracts with all their workers, so that when things like this come up, they're able to access it.
That's a lot of work, really, very important work. And I must say that if we are able to have all of this in place, certainly we will begin to go places, because truly it's one thing that people have complained about, that the level of, in quote, abuse sometimes is high, precisely because there's no paperwork, there's no contract or anything. And that's linked a little to one of the comments we have here in the chat box, a comment from Matthew, who points out that I agree that most serious creative people don't get access to government largesse. From what I heard, what gets creamed off such loans is humongous. Okay, so also this aspect of people who do receive funds, but then do not apply it adequately. And I think that sometimes people are not so willing to give because what they have given before has been abused. Is that something that you have also encountered, this reluctance of the fellow who is once beating and then of course becomes twice shy to do the same again?
Well, yes, and I will say that this is also part of the reasons why the government institutions need to work closely with the guilds in trying to put the structures in place. When you give out money without, you're giving out money without a collateral, okay? But you don't have any way of tracking the person. So now let me give you an example. If you're a bank and you want to give out a loan to one of my producers, I will make sure that that producer actually is doing what they are saying that they're going to do, in the sense that, not that am I going to monitor it, but if you're the bank and you ask me for a reference, I would know that you're giving it out. Like, okay, Project Act came, and a lot of people who took money for production never produced anything, but it was a grant. So and because there was nothing done to those producers who didn't produce anything, people thought it was easy to just take money and not do anything. So that created a bad impression to a lot of bankers, etc. Then you've had people who have taken loans and not paid it back. But what did you agree that some of the producers, that what can buy them the money was so much, and that they had to work with certain restrictions. So if you're a producer and you can get equipment for less money, but you're made to pay more because you're getting it from a particular place, that is one of the excuses, that they were put under pressure to take production money and pay huge amounts for producers, and then they didn't get the cinema space. So it's the whole ecosystem that needs to be worked on. There is a lot of monopoly going on. The industry is going through interesting times, in terms of, some people make films, the cinemas wouldn't work together and give them enough time. So distribution is a key problem to what we're facing in Nigeria today. We have a distribution problem. It's not that we have a content problem. We have a distribution problem. We don't have enough cinema screens, and some of the cinemas that are affordable and in more communities, so that the filmmaker can actually make money from their film. So community cinemas, for me, is a major distribution value chain to the Nigerian film industry. You can imagine where we have in almost all the local governments, whereby people could go and watch a film for as low as 200 naira. It will make a difference in the full value chain. And because a lot of the villages, there's no light, so it will give something to people to do. And that is one of the things that I think is that if government really wants to be serious about Nollywood, it's not just about coming up with, giving people 30,000 or 40,000 or whatever. Empower the ecosystem, build the community cinemas, and that would also create jobs for these people. So it's not just, oh, we're doing skills training. When you do the skills training, where are they going to work? Do you know what I mean? So, and then for the people who are taking money, if they know that when you take the money, it will go to the cinemas, and then the distribution, like I always say to the people who are the distributors, because there is an association for the distributors, they need to work well together. So one of the problems we've had is that although they say they're working on it, we always get complaints from producers that they don't get quality time from some of the cinema chains because they're not being distributed by them. So unless you're going to the same distributor who has the largest cinema chain or something, you're not going to have enough time or enough screens, or you can't get the right timing. So obviously there is a shortage of cinema screens in Nigeria. And then it's like, when it comes to the award system, you're also finding that we're trying to encourage language films, because you'll find that now some films do well in certain areas, like Tony Abraham's films do very well in Ilorin, in Ibadan, in Abeokuta, and that is a niche. Do you understand? And so we would want to see those community cinemas so that these films can penetrate more and bring more money to our film. And then we also like to see some digital platforms locally that are for our films that have access, like Super TV that just came on. We're happy that something like that came on because it's zero data. And then we'd also like the TV stations to do more for film and series for our producers. And that's where the money really is. Our television industry has not yet, well, let's say it's not even hit 30% of its potential yet. That's where there's a lot of money, because it's advertising. People watch TV in Nigeria. As bad as we complain about NTA still has one of the highest ratings, because that's what people get in their localities. It's not everybody that can afford Go TV or cable TV or Star Times or DSTV. Not everybody can. There's a limit to the population that can afford it. So we still need to work on terrestrial TV.
Very good point indeed. Very good point. I'm very much interested in the community cinemas, because that's something that we've been hearing quite a lot about. One sees, you pointed out, the potential is tremendous, really. How many people are there in this country, and really how many people have access to the cinemas as they stand today? It's really limited. But so I don't hold all the space for my questions, let me turn to the chat. I have a question here from Esther, who says, how does one register as a producer, and when, before or after they produce anything, to prove they're producers?
You can actually register as a producer, as an associate producer, if you have not made a film before, so that it works you through. We have a student producers. We have different levels. So basically I'll put the website address online, and then she can just log on and get access to the form. And basically she can register, and then she'll be screened. But so there are different levels of joining the Producers Association. You don't have to be a full-time producer at the moment. And that's another thing. There are different types of producers. There's showrunners, there are line producers, there's full producers, there's executive producers. That's another whole thing, another whole area.
Okay, thank you. Then I have a question from Elizabeth, who says, I am presently at an audition in Abuja, and we were all made to pay 200 naira each in the name of Actors Guild. Is this standard practice?
I don't think so. And I will take that up with the president of the Actors Guild. I know that we don't pay for auditions. It's something we've campaigned against, because we feel it's been exploitative of people who really just want a chance to show their abilities. So I know that as a rule, nobody should pay for auditions. Nobody should. If it's a training, it's different, but an audition, no, it's not. That's not standard at all.
Okay, thank you. That will be very reassuring to Elizabeth. Then I have a question also from Greg. Greg says, what are you doing about refusal of international organizations like Netflix to be upfront about projects' costs in Nigeria? Information on how much movies, etc., are purchased internationally is always out there, but they refuse to give out the numbers here. And this is bad for our producers who can't gauge what their projects are.
I can, Greg, we're actually working with the government on this. There's this whole thing that I keep saying, everybody comes into Nigeria, bypasses even the guilds and associations and tries to deal with people directly. And also our own producers will also not want them to deal with the guilds and associations. But I can say that that is being worked on right now. There is a discussion that will happen early December between our government and these streaming services coming in from all over the world as to how the parameters of work is, because we've engaged. There's a lot of NDAs being signed. As a lawyer, the first instance is that brings up a lot of, light bulbs in my head. Why are we signing all these documents if it's just a straightforward deal? And so, yes, we are working on it. And I would assure him that by next year, a lot of things will change in that area. But we all kind of know what the figures are at the moment, but we need to make it more open, just like you said, like what is happening and obtainable all over the world. But this has not just been with Netflix. It started even when African Magic first came into Nigeria. There was all the secrecy about what was being paid, how it was being paid, etc. And there are too many middle people as well in the game that makes it a bit difficult. And then Nigerians have a terrible habit. I'm sorry, I will say it. We always try to portray ourselves, especially in our film industry, as we sabi, so you don't need to talk to anybody else. No, don't talk to this person because this is this, and don't do this because this is that, and bypass the guilds. They're not serious. So you always wanted to run people down, and that's why I like what's happening now in the guild structure. There's a lot of reworking within the system that the guild heads have come together to realize that if we don't do what we need to do, from the writers, the cinematographers. I was having a go at the Cinematographers Guild the other day because you have so many cinematographers coming in from all over the world to work in Nigeria. Are they getting permits? How is this working? You can't just walk into South Africa and start working. Do you know what I mean? There's just so much capacity work that is going out. And when we argue about it, they say that, we don't have enough professionals. So that is their way of bypassing it. So fine, but what are they paying? I always tell people that when you go to South Africa, there are minimum wage guarantees you must meet just for you to do your job. You just can't walk in and do it. And so those are the things that we are working with. And that's what we're trying to do with the NFC and the minister, to make sure that those structures are put into place to protect what we've built in Nigeria. But we are also working to increase capacity as well, because as more productions come on board, then there will be a lot of work to do.
Lovely point. Thank you. Greg, I think Greg echoes some of what you've said now when he says, don't you think the actors and producers are guilty as they do not want the numbers of their projects disclosed? I think that ties into...
That's basically it. But, it is going to be, that's why the minimum wage is also important. If you understand, the minimum wage will make sure that even if the producer wants to tell you, this is not working, then you would know that, but you have to pay this. And it's, there will be minimum wage for each level of production. This is something we've been discussing with the Actors Guild. It's not just, okay, we know that there are low productions. We also know that there are big budget productions. And we've had a few incidents, even with COVID on sets for actors. And this is one of the reasons we're having to start to look at all the documentation and the paperwork and how this affects everybody. It's not business as usual, I can say that, because we've had some really nasty experiences with COVID on people's sets, and that has fallen back to us as producers to now protect not even just our producers, but protect the actors as well with testing, especially when it's big productions. So like I said, it's us.
Yeah. Now that you have mentioned COVID, I was quite struck by the fact that, well, you took over as president right in the middle of COVID, and you many of the things that you indicated that you were going to try to work on, well, we have remained in the in a state of COVID, really. And this is a period in which the work of the industry has been greatly affected, at least between January last year and up till this moment. Things, okay, are beginning to stabilize a bit, but the industry has been greatly affected. So how has this impacted on many of the targets that you have set for yourself?
Well, it's we have a weird country. I'll put it this way. Even within the pandemic, a lot of the producers were still working, especially outside Lagos, um, but for us, it was good in a way because it gave us time to do paperwork. And that was the period we used to get our database together. That was the whole COVID period allowed us to get the paperwork in terms of the database. So we're connecting with people online. We made sure that the forms for membership were all online. So we had the revalidation period. We had like 3 months of revalidating members, getting their membership numbers up and building our website, etc. So in a way, COVID allowed us to start collecting the data that you've been talking about and doing the paperwork. So I think I tell everybody that our first year in office has been about doing the paperwork and putting the office structure of the association in place so that whoever comes after we leave will have a structure in place. And that's what we're trying to do. So that they will now, so after that, now we've started the training. We've started doing physical trainings as well. We started in May this year. We did Asaba, we've done Rivers, and we just did Akwa Ibom. So we're back on the road. Like you say, it's opening up, but we're doing big, smaller numbers, but we're more regularly.
Okay. Well, Akinyele has a question here. He says, I attended your event on your 100 film projects at Ikeja a few months ago. How can one participate in the project, either as writer, producer, or actor?
Basically, the 100 film project is just started, and you can log on to, I'll put it in there, it's called creatives.com to just register your interest. And basically, I'll just explain what the 100 film project is. Over the years, I've trained a lot of young people across the continent. And after training, they don't really have anything to go to. So we changed it a little bit. So now, not only do you get trained, but you will work on a film project so that it's a skills to work project. So that's what we're doing. So now we also have like a space where we call it like a market space called creatives.com, where they will be able to interact once they're being trained. They show their interest, and then even after that, you will still be there. So if I come to anywhere and I want an actor, or I want a makeup artist, or I want a script writer, I will just be able to log on and reach out to those group of people that have been trained and access to a database of people across the continent that can be worked on. And we've had to do that kind of thing in order to keep the sustainability of the people that we have trained over the years. Because we have trained in Malawi, South Africa, Gambia, Burkina, Sierra Leone. I've done a lot of training over the years, working with young people. And one of the things that we're trying to do right now is that training, but we're also trying to do a specialist training on indigenous languages. It's interesting that this year Nigeria did not have a film going to the Oscars again. We had one last year, The Milkmaid, and now we don't have one for this year. So we will be doing some more training on making films in our languages, which is very, very important. Very important. South Africans do it a lot, and you can follow the film. And that was one of the things that was exciting with The Milkmaid. It was made in Hausa language, and it's thoroughly enjoyable. You could follow it on the subtitles as well. So yes, for us as AMAA, that's one of the things we would like to encourage, working with the languages in Africa as well.
That's fantastic. Now, if I may just take you a little bit down that line, because you have done quite a lot in terms of, using AMAA as a launch pad for carrying out so many of these Pan-African projects. This ties into what you were saying earlier about the community cinemas, because something that I think AMAA did in the past was really promoting the building or the development of cinemas across various countries in Africa. And it's also one of the things that you have indicated that you're going to work on during your tenure, the one of developing the community cinemas, terrestrial television and cable networks, the distribution structure, more or less. Now, I would like to know, please, how this other project of building cinemas across Africa, what stage it's at now? Is it still going on? What were the achievements? And what you're going to do here in this country? It's a pretty challenging thing to try to put a distribution structure in place here. What are the prospects?
Well, I've been working with a team of people outside Nigeria, within the African countries, because what was interesting is when we went to India, I did a recce in India about community cinemas, and it showed me that it didn't have to be so formal. You could just have a hall with plastic chairs and a screen. And basically that's how a lot of cinemas, community cinemas, were in India, in a lot of the slum areas, etc. But it gave people something to do. And my business partner and I tried it out in Kenya and Uganda, and you find that it's working. And then you have a lot of informal community cinemas in Nigeria, which we call viewing centers, where people watch football, where this thing. So it's like working on a conversion. But I always say to people, like I've just done a paper for one of the states, and I said, look, these structures will help to enhance young people's quality of life, because it doesn't have to be, the structures can be used for training, coding training during the day, or something technical during the day, whilst from 6 p.m. in the evening, it can be used for watching films. I think it's just an orientation thing. So it's to engage and to see those people that understand that if you can tap into the community cinema, you would have unlocked distribution in Nigeria. They would have also unlocked a major area of being able to pass messages within communities. Now, there are different ways to do this. You know that in every village in Nigeria, somehow we managed to build our town hall, right? Yeah. And those town halls are basically empty till certain periods, either the August meeting or December or something. So we've been working on how do we engage with some of these town halls to use them as community cinemas, whilst empowering young people in each community to use it themselves, so that we will find a way to transmit. And technology has made it easy that you can actually transmit these films in a particular way, in different ways. And so that's what we're trying to work on. It's been a little bit difficult, but it's still a work in progress. And I think that it will basically happen. It will soon happen. I think people have to understand that if you unlock distribution, you unlock the potential of this industry in such a maximum way. And sometimes I always wonder what we do with a lot of our local government offices as well, you know. Let me not get into the politics of our local government offices, because I've been visiting a few of them, and there's been a lot of halls in there that can be truly converted, if you know what I mean, to money earning, and because they're secure environments, etc. So yes, we're working. I don't know how long it will take, because sometimes I look back and I remember the late AMAA, and Big Sis, this was her big thing, that the minute we're able to get Algon and the community cinemas going, we've unlocked distribution. You know, AMAA was so passionate about unlocking distribution.
It's a key area for the industry, really, because once you have that, many other things will fall in place. I think that's a key thing.
Yeah.
Now, I have another question from Greg, who is asking, can the AMP mete out punitive measures to industry practitioners?
It depends on what they do. If it's a producer, like, okay, we have cases where producers have taken money from executive producers and not done what they are supposed to do. Yes, at that point, we do get involved and we try to sort it out between the two people. And if that doesn't work, we report them to the other guilds, and then they're suspended, or we make sure that they try to refund the money, or we make sure that it's, you know, we always try to find a resolution. However, when somebody is not willing to do the right thing, we can also suspend them from the association, and which means at the moment, if you are suspended, you will not be able to censor your film. So if you need your film to be censored and you've done something bad, we can actually make sure you don't get it censored, in the sense of reporting you for a breach of contract if it can be proved that you breached the contract. So that's what we are able to do. So, but it's not, you know, we try to negotiate and find resolutions within producers, executive producers, actors, anybody within our ecosystem.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question from Alexander, who says, thank you very much for this insightful presentation. In particular, the initiative to collect data on members' revenues is a welcome and groundbreaking initiative. When the director of the NFC came to speak to the center a few months ago, he mentioned the Nollywood-wide statistical survey that his organization was also conducting in collaboration with the National Bureau of Statistics. Are you aware of this initiative, and are you coordinating your survey with theirs?
Well, you know, the difficulty with some of what they're trying to do is that it will actually be the people that censor the films that know the number of films that are censored, if you know what I mean. So I think all of us are working together indirectly. We kind of know that when the films are going to censors board. So how we basically know is because they always have to have updated lists at the censors board. But we are actually just trying to get an understanding from our members, because a lot of our members don't actually, in certain areas, like, okay, in Kannywood, a lot of people just go on YouTube at the moment. They don't even censor the films. Do you understand? So there's a lot going on that we're trying, because we're in the guilds, we're trying to get the paperwork and then we'll pass it on, so that we just want to be able to have a data that reflects what is our reality. It's internal to us at the moment, but we are aware of what the NFC is doing and also the census board is doing. But at the moment, this is just internal to us.
Moira is asking whether the AMP has a site where one can log into to confirm whether a prospective or contact producer is registered with the guild or not.
That is something we're working on right now. We've just signed up with a company called Glued Up. So it's all part of what we're doing. We're trying to make sure our database is accessible to everybody so that you can just find out directly when you log on and check that producer's name, their picture, and make sure that the picture matches the person you're seeing in front of you as well. So yes, that just give us like till the end of December, and then you can have that. You'll be able to do that. Like I said, we first had to spend a few months doing revalidation, and that's what now we're uploading onto our website.
There's a question here from Esther, but I think it's one you have already responded to as to how one becomes a producer with a guild. You have already indicated that exactly.
Okay.
There are different ways of doing that, and they can be accessed on the site. Now, with so much of this administrative work that you're doing, I wonder if you still have time for your own creative work, because even though I don't think people know you so well as a film director or as a television producer, but this is a very strong aspect also of you, and also your writing, your poetry writing. So do you find time for your own creative work?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I have a team right now that I'll say I'm mentoring on AMAA. I'm kind of letting a team run the AMAA itself, but you know, like a mother hen, you're still there. And that's because a part of me, the creative part of me, has been nagging at me that, you know, you need to get back and do certain things. So yes, I am working on a project. Hopefully we'll be shooting in January. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but because we've been going back and forth on the script itself. And it's something that I've wanted to do. And so it is a series, and I'll be shooting in January. And that's just personal to me. It's not about anything. It's just about me wanting to chill. Do you know what I mean? For me, creating is chilling. So yes. And yes, I have been writing, funnily enough. Writing for me is an ability to relax. It allows me to vent without basically venting on anybody. I tell people a lot that my mom was part of the reasons I learned to write very early. When I was very young, I'm an only girl, and I'm the last child. I had 7 older brothers, and my mom was like, okay, I want you to be like a young lady. You have to learn to be a girl. So you need to behave ladylike. So I was being made to do a lot of things like read books, classic things. And so sometimes when I want to go to parties, and I had a lot of friends in primary school, she said, no, learn to read. So I got into reading a lot of books, and Dad would buy me loads and loads of Enid Blyton books, Jane Austen, Shakespeare. And then sometimes I just started writing longhand things that I wanted to do, and that's how it evolved, you know. So yes, writing for me is an escape route. I like to write different stories, different things about myself, or how I feel, or you know, sometimes you can't really say what you want to say so that people won't quote you. So I write it on my journal. Do you know what I mean? And just express myself. And yeah, I think everybody should have a journal to just say what they feel.
I agree with you. Okay, right. Well, Moira is sending something nice here. She says the best Christmas gift will be the site, which you have made reference to. And she's reserving her kisses to you then. Well done, Madam President. We're proud of you. And Chisom also says, thank you, ma'am. Though I joined late, I would like to know the criteria or requirements for joining the AMP.
Yeah,
well, I think it's the same. It's the same line, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same line. Thank you very much. Well, let me just ask one one last question. I want to go back to what you said about promoting the making of indigenous films. One of the challenges, away from even the world of the filmmakers, is the fact that, well, many of our languages are being lost. Many of our people have lost or are losing the ability to speak these languages. Now, even though one may want to promote the making of these films, for the filmmaker, I guess it'll be also a bit challenging, because if you cannot find actors who can actually speak these languages convincingly or in an authentic way, that would be a great restriction. I don't know, how do you see this? How do you foresee that such a thing could be dealt with? Because it's almost like a vicious circle. You want to do the films, but there are no speakers. At the same time, the films will help to promote the languages. So what is there locked in, so sort of?
Well, you see, in a vicious circle, you need to start from somewhere. Do you understand? And that's what we're going to try and keep doing. It's even about getting to the point where you start to train on schools and, making young people within the school system start to learn these languages. I always tell parents one thing. When you say to me, oh, my child doesn't speak English, or my child doesn't speak my language, oh, I don't want it. I'm like, why? If there's an emergency, how are you going to tell that child to run away if everybody there is speaking English? How can you send a message? I tell people that one of the greatest gifts I got from my parents, my ability to speak my language very well, because Dad made it a point that when he was speaking to me, even with our school in England, he would only speak in Igbo.
Right.
And when I answer him in English, he said, I don't understand what you're saying in Igbo again. So you would have to speak in Igbo. And I didn't understand how important that was. And I'll say this to everybody, until my father died, okay? I'm being the Ada, and I went to the village. Some of my, the villagers were saying things that, because I grew up in England, that I wouldn't understand what they're saying. And they were like saying, they were just speaking. And I now turned around to them and answered in Igbo. You should see the shock on their faces. And they now learned to watch themselves. And my grandmother was also very important in this to me, because she used to say, there's a saying in Igbo that, that is, if I want to send a message to you with my eye, it doesn't have any English translation. So I think we're doing ourselves a disservice by losing our language and our culture. And it's imperative for us as filmmakers to try and endeavor to understand how important it is to keep this culture. The late Mary Makeba always said to me something. She said, Peace, the brainwash of the African is where they actually took away the whole spirit from us. That if we can find ourselves again, we would learn that so many things are alien to our nature. I mean, aggression. There's so many things that, let me give people an example. When you come to a village scene and you say, okay, let us pour libation against a problem that is happening. And then you say, no, let's take it to a priest. The young people there who know that the libation will be more effective because an immediate problem solver would say, no, let's go to the priest, because they feel that God is more forgiving. We all know our culture. We all know our understanding, but we're losing it because we think it's about civilization and modernization and wanting to belong to something. But I think that more and more now I'm beginning to appreciate what it is to be a proper African and understand my language and engage my language and understand the cosmology of being Igbo or African generally, if you know what I mean. And that's another thing about us with understanding the religion and understanding affirmations of spirituality, is that we've been so brainwashed even with our language to feel that it's something we should be ashamed of. So we as filmmakers and creatives should find ways of making it beautiful and attractive to people to use language to tell our stories, because there's some stories that cannot translate to English. And even The Milkmaid was one of those. If you watch that film and it was in English, it wouldn't have as much as an impact. It's also, when you watch a lot of the South African films that are in their languages, it's more impactful because it's the sound. Our languages are very sweet. The way we say them, it's sweet. So let's learn to bring it back. Let's learn to, they said, make it attractive, make it sexy so it sells. Yes, so that's what we're going to try and do. Encourage people to do it because it's nice to do it. Just the way we've made it nice to wear Ankara and wear our traditional clothes. Let us make learning and speaking our African languages very attractive, and that it is not something to be ashamed of. My mom is from Aware, my father is from Nkwera, and I speak both dialects, and I'm proud of being able to. I hear Yoruba, I don't speak it. I'm trying to learn Hausa. Yes, I really want to be able to communicate without having to speak a word of English to anybody. I tell people that I am proud to be able to hold a conversation in Igbo without having to add one word of English. So
That's
I'm going to
fantastic.
try and do that with film. No, it's not easy anymore. You should know that.
I know.
Trying not to speak their language.
I know. Because also many of the things we are trying to deal with are not really from our culture. So you're forced to look for these
interpretation.
alternatives. So, but it's great, really. I think what I will add to what you said is the language sounds sweet, but also there's the authenticity. It sounds really, I think that's it's really beautiful. And that's the idea also at, African Film Academy. There's no name here, but he says, well, it's part of why Nigerians are lacking their identity because, they're not using their languages. Okay. Well, Endurance says, thank you so much for this informative education. I would like to know how to join the AMP. You've already responded to that. Yeah. And also Oluranti says, thank you very much for the good work you're doing at the AMP and the industry. God bless, ma. Then Dele says, we're doing ourselves a disservice. He's quoting you now. When we lose our language and culture, this is well put, he says. Any filmmaker that does not understand his duty in protecting and promoting our culture is not fit to be of a filmmaker. Thank you, madam. And I would also say thank you so very much. I have enjoyed this conversation. We could go on and on and on, but our time is just about up now. We have. Thank you so much. Yeah, we should be thanking you. This has been so enlightening. There's so many things here. Well, Afemi, just one last comment here. Afemi K. Mohammed says, proud of you, my friend. Language is very important in communication.
Yes.
And so let me join everybody else to say in third thing. And well, I wish you the very best, really, because you have spoken about so many things that I think so many of us have identified as important. Okay, one that touches me especially is the one of distribution. I did my thesis work around that, so I really appreciate the importance of what you're trying to do, and it's something that truly we hope works because it's a key aspect of the industry that is lacking as it is now. But if we don't have that, nothing works. So truly, I wish you the very best. It's a lot of headache, I know. You're still.
It is, but the thing with distribution is a lot of collaboration has to be, and patience. And so I like the work you guys are doing at the Nollywood Center, and I think it's part of all the ecosystems that need to be worked on. Is that we all must understand that the only way African creative industry will go is creating distribution and collaborations. We must work together to grow this industry because it's bigger than the oil that we all talk about. And so I want to thank you for having me, and I hope you guys can join us for AMAA on the 28th of November.
Well, so we certainly will. We most certainly will. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. But let me thank also let me thank also our participants. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the questions. Okay, and thank you very much once again for being with us. I wish you all the very best. Now, this interview will also be in our YouTube channel subsequently. So those who want to have a second look can also watch it there again. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
All the best. Thank you. Take care.